How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to another All Things Liverpool episode with me and Anish Dogra. And well, we're in the swing of things now, aren't we? Season's 2 weeks underway. Most teams have already played their second match from after today. Man City were in action, of course, and Arsenal, Manchester United, and quite a few teams. And Liverpool, of course, in action on Monday night against Crystal Palace, where hopefully we'll need to obviously produce a much better performance than what we did against Fulham. That was quite a shocking performance by our highest standards. But obviously we'll get into that in a bit more detail a bit later. So as for the show today, as you can see there at the bottom, we'll be talking about last week's match against Fulham. Our current injury crisis, a bit of transfer talk, and then we'll finalize by previewing the game on Monday night. So, without further ado, the game against Fulham. To begin with, it was a really strange game because when you think about the performance that we produced against City the week before in the Community Shield, it felt like, okay, we are ready. Everything is great. We're playing really, really well. Our opponent can't really match us, and everything was clicking, and we deservedly won that game. Then when you go into that week, you had a good week of training, no injuries in training during that week, and then you go into Fulham. So of course it would always be a challenging match, coming up against a promoted side that obviously be very very excited and will have a lot of energy. Being at home and Fulham having won the title last season, coming into it as not as favourites, but coming into it in pretty good spirits. And when they got players like Mitrovic, who absolutely destroyed the championship last season, a couple of new signings like Palhinha, who I thought was very, very good in that match, they would always be, feeling a bit confident about themselves going into the game. But as I previewed the game, last in our last episode, the only way we would have not won that match was if we were substandard, and that's exactly what we were. We didn't play well from top to bottom. In the first half, particularly, Salah didn't get in the game. Firmino wasn't, dictating or being creative. I thought Diaz was okay. He was very unlucky. He hit the he hit the woodwork or with that shot, and he scored, but he wasn't offside, but Robertson wasn't in the build up. And then in midfield, Fabinho wasn't really protecting the back four. Thiago, I've never seen Thiago misplace more passes in a match than I had in that game. So that summed up, that kind of summed up our midfield, and Henderson wasn't really at it either. But credit to Fulham, they were very competitive, very aggressive, and they played with a lot of energy, and that's exactly what you have to do to play against Liverpool, because obviously with us we've got one of probably the hardest working team in the league. A team that runs so much and always fights second balls and with the high press and all of that. So Fulham really had to compete it at that level to have any kind of chance of winning that game. But from our point of view, it was also avoidable had we just played our normal game, had we set the tempo from the off, asserted our dominance, maybe withstand the early storm, but we didn't do any of that. And Fulham, credit to them, they really put us under the cosh and deservedly, went ahead with Mitrovic, who a lot of people are talking about going into this season, whether he can produce that kind of form going into the Premier League, having done so well last season in the Championship. But he certainly did so, and I think after the game, people were talking about his performance versus Van Dijk, and deservedly so, because that was probably the first time I'd ever seen Van Dijk. In fact, I think any person seeing Van Dijk that much under the cosh by Mitrovic. Van Dijk's normally so unflustered when whoever he comes up against, no matter if it's Messi or no matter if it's a Ronaldo. But Mitrovic really had his number, and fair play to him. He was strong, he was physical, really good on the ball, and and gave our defense a really, really hard time. So going in 1-0 down at the break, and as for the goal, of course, people will again talk about Trent and his lack of defensive capability, which of course it is there. But for that goal, there's nothing he can really do about it. Maybe he can try and read the situation a bit better and try to get his body in front of the ball. But if that was Kyle Walker in that position for Man City, or Reece James, or whoever Tottenham's right back is, pretty much no right back in the world will stop that goal from going in, because of Mitrovic's size and his height. So good goal from their point of view. A bit sloppy from us again, not stopping the cross. That's something we really failed to. That's something our opponents really made the most of at the back end of last season. Remember against Villarreal, 2 goals happened, via crosses that we didn't stop, and it was the same case against Fulham. So clearly something we haven't really worked on, and hopefully we will address in the coming weeks. So going down 1-0 at half time, no complaints whatsoever. We were not good. And then of course going into the second half, not much of an impact in the first 5 or 6 minutes. Obviously, with the great thing with this season, with 5 substitutes, you can really make a lot of changes. You can make changes early on in the match, 2-3 changes at a time if things aren't working out for you. And that's exactly what we did. Within 5 or 6 minutes of the second half, Nunes came on, Harvey Elliott came on. Of course, Harvey he came on because of an injury, another injury to Thiago, which is of course very, very annoying and something we'll talk about in a bit more detail later on. But I feel once we made those changes, we were far, far better. I felt we had, I wouldn't say more control. I still felt Fulham were very dangerous, and we still weren't at it. But we had we were a bit better going forward. I think I can definitely say that much. And we had a bit more attacking prowess. I thought on that right channel with Trent on the right back, Harvey Elliott in that right centre mid spot, and Salah at right wing. I thought that was a very good triangle, and they combined very, very well. I thought Harvey Elliott actually had a pretty good impact when he came on, and I quite liked his performance. Then as for the goal, let's talk about the first goal. So a really great goal from Nunes, and that's exactly why we got him in. Something different. Something that we've not had ever in Klopp's era, a real number 9, a real target man. And you can see in that first half, Firmino, that's not his kind of play. He'll always drop off and feed the ball to the wide players who will score the goal. But with Nunes, he'll stick up top. He'll make runs in behind. He'll occupy the 6-yard box, and he'll occupy the 2 central defenders. And it was a brilliant, brilliant cameo again. As we saw in the Community Shield, and as we saw last Saturday, he was fantastic. Fulham didn't really have any answers to try and stop him, and I think the most annoying thing in that period, so from when we got the equaliser, and something obviously to touch upon was the combination he had with Salah, which I thought was very, very encouraging. In the Community Shield, I think it was Salah's cross to Nunes that got the penalty. And we saw it again on last Saturday. Salah's cross and Nunes with a very, very smart finish. I thought it was, he missed one just a few minutes earlier, but he got that one off very, very well, and that was it's a very, very good goal. And I think the most annoying thing in that period was that when we went to 1-1. There were so many chances where we could have made it 2-1, and then had we gone in front, you could have said, all right, that'll be game over, because we can control the game, play at a slow tempo, and then pick Fulham off as and when. And there were chances, of course. Again, Nunes heavily involved. I think he knocked one down for Diaz, who would have scored had Fulham not put not got a good block in. I think there was another few chances as well. And then, annoyingly, we were hit with a sucker punch. I think Fulham, were deservedly led at the break, and there were no questions about that. But in the second half, we were definitely the better side, created more chances, looked like the team that was scoring, but Fulham hit us on the counter-attack. And then Van Dijk, which I think, I might be wrong with this stat, but I think I'm correct. I think it's the first time he's conceded a penalty for Liverpool, which is quite a remarkable feat. But that just exhibits the problems that he had against Mitrovic and how well the Serbian did against him. So fair play to Mitrovic, won the penalty. I think a lot of people were saying that it's quite soft, but if it was the other way around and it was in a situation where Liverpool were getting a penalty, I would have want that to be given for us. So I think for Fulham, it was the right call, and it was a fair decision by the referee. So good penalty. Alisson went the right way, but it was a very good effort. Hard low in the corner, and as a keeper, there's not much you can do when a penalty is taken like that. And fair play to Fulham, but we did well again. Again, trying to bounce back straight away, which is exactly what we did. Again, the long ball to Nunes, something that will cause, I think, a lot of problems to opposition defenses, and exactly what happened there. So the long ball to Nunes, causing a bit of mayhem in that penalty area, and Salah on hand to tap in and get us the equaliser. And of course, Mo Salah now that's now a straight season, well, every season since he signed for Liverpool, that he scored on the opening day. So another great achievement for him and for us. And then even then, I still felt that we could have easily lost that game. I still felt Fulham, whenever they went forward, they were quite threatening, and we weren't really assured of ourselves at the back. And then even then, right at the end, we had a great chance to win it. Henderson, who was pretty poor in that game, he could have won. Could have stole the headlines, and had his shot just been a foot lower under the crossbar, we would have won the game with his long range effort. So very unlucky there. So as for the game, match day one, you never mind. Well, you hate to lose a game, but if you were, it's not the end of the world. Drawing a game where we shouldn't have probably drawn, I think you'll take it and you'll move on with it, and hopefully that point counts towards something at the end of the season. But of course, with that game came its problems, and of course the biggest problem was yet another injury, which is a real worry for us right now. So I'm just going to bring up this quick page and have a look at our current injury list. So Thiago, of course, went off in that match with a thigh injury. He's going to be out, I think, for 6 weeks now, which is obviously a big blow. And obviously, with the season that we are in, where there'll be a lot of games, there'll be like one international break until the World Cup, and I think teams will be playing 16 or 17 matches before they break away for the tournament. It's of course a big blow to have Thiago missing for the next 6 weeks. That means he'll miss, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7 Premier League matches, a couple of Champions League games as well. So that's obviously a big blow. Then we've got Curtis Jones, who's been out for a little bit. I think he's close to returning, but far from ideal not having a midfielder there. Diogo, who's not played since the end of last season. I think he got injured for Portugal in the Nations League, and then he had a reoccurrence of the same injury in pre-season, which has now set him back. Simicast, I think, is going to be back for us this week. Against Palace at least, so he'll be back on the bench. Keita, who will be back, he's only got illness, which is quite a nice thing compared to what he's normally had in his time as a Liverpool player. So he'll be back, I think, on Monday. Jean Matip, who again, I was really happy that he was able to play so many matches last season. But with Jean Matip, you can never ever rely that he will be available every single week for the whole season. But I think there is a chance that he could be available at least for Monday night. And then of course we got Oxlade-Chamberlain and Konate. So a lot of injuries there, and it's not just injuries to like squad or fringe players. These are injuries to first team players. Konate would be playing more often than not. Ox is obviously a good player to have here and there. Thiago and Curtis Jones, of course, 2 first-choice midfielders, and and Jota, no less, who of course had a brilliant campaign for us last year. 15 goals in the league, I think 20 in all comps, and we obviously need him back quite soon. Given how few forward options we have, since obviously Mane left. Origi's obviously gone, and now Minamino. So we are now in a situation where we can't really afford many injuries up front, especially considering that we play with 3 attackers. So a bit of a problem there, and of course some of these players aren't going to be back anytime soon, and we're really got to just try and protect these players as much as possible, because obviously the last thing we want is a repeat of the 2020-21 season, where we had, of course, no centre backs, pretty much injury every single game. I mean, I think I remember in that season James Milner went off with an injury, and that's saying something when James Milner goes off with a muscle problem. Usually he's like one of the most fittest players, probably is the most fittest player in our team. So a real problem there. Hopefully something that will resolve. And of course, one way that we could have resolved it had been to sign a player in the window. Of course, there's still a few weeks left before it shuts. The closing date is the 1st of September, which I think is a Friday. So about 2-3 weeks left. And after hearing Jurgen Klopp's press conference yesterday, I think it was, it's obviously not looking very good in terms of bringing a new midfielder. I know that that is something that we are going to address. We are going to address next summer. I think it's been pretty heavily spoken about across the media, and I think all over Twitter. Pretty much everyone expects a big midfield overhaul in the coming seasons. But for now, I don't think it will be the case. Of course, there has been players linked. Jude Bellingham, of course, is a front runner. I think that's the one we're waiting for. And I don't think it's a question of money, because with whatever they're asking for, I think it's £100 million. I think Liverpool were ready to pay it had Dortmund been willing to sell, and I think that's what it is, because Dortmund's setting policy where they only usually let go one big player every summer, and of course having lost Haaland already, they were never going to let Bellingham go. So it's a case of waiting for him, which is of course very annoying. Obviously a player that could be, or probably will be, very very special, and given his age, a potential to be a real asset for the long term. So that looks like something we'll have to wait. Then there's been other players linked, Nicola Barella, who I think is seen as an alternative to Bellingham. If we aren't able to land him, that could be something that we explore next summer. And I think the other player that was quite heavily linked, well, at least heavily linked in Portugal, there aren't many concrete rumors here in England, but that player is Mateus Nunes from, I think, Sporting Lisbon. Again, a player that has been linked quite heavily from Portugal, but doesn't look like he's coming in. And from the fee that was being reported, roughly £50 million. Of course, 50 million is a lot of money, but given the predicament that we're in, and given the situation, and just the general quality of our midfield, I know you can say how injury prone they are, which is of course a real concern. But had they all been fit, you can honestly say that maybe two of those midfielders are real high quality, and that's Fabinho and Thiago. Of course, Henderson is good, but definitely on the way down now. He's in his 30s and approaching, not, I wouldn't say the twilight of his career, but he's going into that role where James Milner is right now, essentially. That player who still is very, very, very useful to have in the squad, still very valuable to have in matches, and of course the leadership quality that he brings is second to none. But in terms of the performances he can give, it's definitely on the way down. And you look at the others in the squad, Naby Keita, who of course just hasn't delivered, even though I still hope that he can, but he's not delivered since he signed for Liverpool. Oxlade-Chamberlain, of course, would have delivered, I think, had he not suffered that ACL a couple of seasons ago. And then since then, he's had all sorts of little injuries. And then you're looking at Harvey Elliott, Fabio Carvalho, which is of course a big risk to place a lot of faith, a lot of trust in two 20-something-year-olds. One, of course, who is now on the way back up after having that injury last season, Harvey Elliott, that is, and then Fabio Carvalho, who's obviously just joined the club and is still bedding in. So a real concern there with the quality of a midfield, and when you compare it to Man City, because that's who you got to compare it to. You look at that midfield today. De Bruyne was unbelievable, got a goal, got a couple of assists. Gundogan scoring from midfield. Rodri, who is I think one of the best DMs in the world, never mind just in the Premier League. And then you got so many options off the bench as well. Bernardo Silva came on, and of course you got players like Jack Grealish who can play in midfield, and there's so much availability there for them. So for us, a real concerning situation, and something that again probably won't look likely that we'll address soon. But I think the most important thing above all to try and put this on to try and give this a positive spin is that Jurgen Klopp knows best. He always knows that okay, if we need a midfielder, we will get a midfielder now. But clearly he thinks Nunes isn't Mateus Nunes, that isn't up to scratch, or won't be the player that we need, or won't be the player that can push us on to another level. And it's best to use the players that we have now, who can still do a job, can still play well for the club, and wait till next summer where we can bring in a Bellingham or someone of that ilk. So that's pretty much it for transfer talk. And of course, I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that something does happen in the coming weeks, and we do bring in a good midfielder, something that will be useful for the long term, not just a short term quick fix. Obviously, when you're making transfers, you always want to think of the long term implications, and if that does something arise, if somehow Dortmund have a change of heart and are willing to sell Bellingham now, then hopefully that'll be the case. But unlikely for now, and we'll just see how it goes. And as for the game on Monday night, of course, Crystal Palace, who are always a challenging opponent. Of course, the two games last season, we both won. I wouldn't say comfortably. I think the scoreline was quite flattering. Home and away, I thought Alisson was very, very important in both matches. He made a lot of saves to get us 3 points in both games. And Palace, having lost the first game against Arsenal, still I think they're kind of getting up to speed. Of course, I think everyone was talking about their preseason and how it wasn't ideal. I think they travelled to Australia, where with their COVID rules, they don't allow people in if they've not been vaccinated, and a lot of Palace's squad haven't been vaccinated. So for Palace to have to be playing that kind of squad, to have a limited squad and to have some of those players back home where they were training on their own and they weren't with Patrick Vieira and obviously weren't with their teammates. It was far from ideal. But even then, against Arsenal last week, they were still. You can see in the first half that Arsenal were deservedly dominant and Palace were struggling, but in the second half they really came to their own. I thought I think Ramsdale made a couple of good saves and Palace opened them up at times and were really threatening. So having had more than a week now to prepare for this game and obviously get and gel together a bit more after pre-season, I expect Palace to be even more threatening. Of course, players like Zaha, Eze, Olise, who are obviously their star players. I expect them to be heavily involved and them to have well, hopefully not, but I expect them to to try and do their best and have some joy at our defense and at our midfield. But again, like with the Fulham scenario, if we play to the best of our level, and given that we usually do respond after a poor performance and or a poor result, I expect us to be fully at it, back at Anfield, of course, for the first time, or competitively at least, since May. So it'll obviously be a good atmosphere. Night game, of course, which is always great at Anfield. Night games always, of course, always more atmospheric at every ground. So hopefully that'll be the case on Monday night. And in terms of the team, I expect Alisson, of course, will be in goal, providing he doesn't pick up any knocks in the coming days. Trent will play a right back. Then, of course, centre back with Joel Matip, a bit seemingly unavailable. I think obviously there is a chance that he will be fit, but given that he is kind of recovering, I expect Gomez will come into the team and line up alongside Van Dijk. And I think obviously I've spoken about this for quite a while now, where I want Gomez to be that main centre back alongside Van Dijk. So I still think Gomez can reach that full potential. I don't think he'll ever reach the same heights as Van Dijk has, because Van Dijk is something else. But I definitely think Gomez can be one of our main centre backs going forward into the in the long term. So hopefully he'll be starting alongside the big man and delivering a good performance. Then, of course, Robbo at left back, Fabinho in the defensive midfield position. I think Henderson will start. Then, of course, is the most interesting spot in the final three. In the third spot in midfield is who will start. So, of course, you can use the reliability and the experience of James Milner, or you could use the youth in Fabio Carvalho or Harvey Elliott. And for me personally, I think I would go with one of the youngsters. I think Harvey probably deserves to start given his cameo against Fulham last week, and I think with that combination on the right hand side, like I previously mentioned, I think that could definitely pay dividends for us and definitely work out in terms of attacking Palace and trying to break them down. So for me, I think Harvey should play on that right hand channel ahead of Fabio and Milner. And then, of course, for the front three, I think Diaz will be a shoo-in. I don't think there's any debate about that. Salah, of course. And then up front, I think this will be the time where we'll see Nunes making his first start. I know Klopp has, kind of thrown the gauntlet down on Firmino and told Firmino to give me a headache, i.e., give me a decision to make as to who to start up front. But I thought Firmino, he was obviously okay against Man City, wasn't so good against Fulham, and then Nunes has been spectacular in both matches. I think now is the time to start with the number 9. And finally unleash him. So I think he'll start with Nunes up top. I hope we'll see Nunes up top, and I think it'll be a perfect game for him. Of course, being at home, it'll be the first time he'll be playing at Anfield, and obviously it'll be a very, very special occasion. Hearing "You'll Never Walk Alone" as a home player. Of course, he's played there with Benfica last season, but hearing that for the first time will obviously make him feel very, very excited, and hopefully it'll spur him on to get a couple of goals. So I think that'll be the team. And in terms of predictions, I think we should win. I think we have to win, of course, having after Man City won again today, very convincingly and unsurprisingly, of course. And I expect us to be really, really at it, really with full steam ahead and really, really, really putting Palace to the sword. And then it's just really up to us to make sure we're efficient, because I do expect us to start fast. I do expect us to put Palace under a lot of pressure from the get-go. And then it's just making sure that we take our chances, ensuring Palace do not have a chance to get back into the game after we miss any early chances, and really stamping our authority. So hopefully it all goes well on Monday night. We get our first win of the season, and of course after the results today, and I think we should really talk about Manchester United after that calamitous performance against Brentford. I mean, to lose against Brentford, of course, all right, Brentford are a good team, and they are very physical. Got a lot of tall players and big players, and of course they will play to that strength. But to be 4-0 down in 35 minutes, was it? I mean, it's something else, and there's a lot of problems at that club from top to bottom. I think the only thing that you can't really blame right now is Eric Ten Hag, because he's clearly seeing the situation and seeing how bad it is. And obviously Rangnick saw it when he was in charge last season for a brief spell, and now Ten Hag is seeing it. So those players, they're clearly not at it. Some of them obviously don't want to be there. Some of them just aren't up to it, and obviously some of them are still betting in. But funny enough, it'll be very typical of Man United now to put the performance of their life against us when we play them on the following Monday night after the Palace game. So obviously looking forward, it'll be a great game with that, and hopefully another one where we produce a similar kind of result last season. But it will be typical of Man United to pull a rabbit out of the hat and to really get their season going. But that all doesn't matter. It's all about Monday night. It's all about Crystal Palace and all about getting the 3 points. But anyway, that is all we got for today. Hope you all enjoyed this podcast. We'll of course be back again next week to review the game. That's the Palace game, and of course previewing the Manchester United game, and talking about all the other issues off the pitch. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all later. Bye bye.